She was live on national television. Millions of Americans were watching. And then she was gone. No warning. No goodbye. No explanation. One moment, Savannah Guthrie, one of the most recognized faces in American morning television, was sitting at the anchor desk on NBC's Today show. The next moment, her chair was empty. Her co-anchor Craig Melvin turned to the camera and said just 11 words. Savannah had to leave a little early. She'll be right back tomorrow, though. That was it. No details. No context. Nothing. And within minutes, the internet erupted. Because here's what you need to understand. This wasn't just any anchor leaving early. This was a woman who has been living through one of the most devastating personal crises any family can face. This was a daughter whose 84-year-old mother has been missing for more than 3 months. Suspected kidnapped, pulled from her home in the middle of the night in Tucson, Arizona, and whose case has gripped the entire nation. So when Savannah Guthrie disappeared from that desk without a word, people didn't just wonder. People feared. And that fear tells you everything about how deeply this story has touched the heart of America. Stay with us, because in the next 20 minutes, we are going to walk you through every single detail of this story. From the mystery of Savannah's mid-show exit, to the shocking FBI revelations about critical mistakes made in this case, to the heartbreaking story of an 84-year-old grandmother who vanished into the night and has not been seen since. This story is not over, and you need to know every piece of it. But before we go any further, if you care about stories like this, stories that matter, stories that go deeper than the headlines, hit that subscribe button right now, and share this video. Because the more people who know about Nancy Guthrie, the better the chances she comes home. Let's get into it. It was a Wednesday morning, May 6th, 2026. The Today Show was in full swing, as it always is, 4 hours of live television beaming into millions of American homes every single day. Savannah Guthrie was at the desk, doing her job, smiling, anchoring, being the professional she has always been. And then, 90 minutes into the broadcast, she was gone. No dramatic moment. No breaking news alert. No on-air goodbye. She simply wasn't there anymore. Co-anchor Craig Melvin stepped in to fill the gap, and he told the audience in the simplest possible terms that Savannah had to leave early, and that she would be back the next day. NBC offered nothing more than that. No statement. No explanation. The network stayed completely silent on the reason for her departure. And Savannah herself, who has been remarkably open with the public throughout the crisis surrounding her mother, did not say a single word about it publicly. Of course, the silence made things worse, because the internet does not tolerate a vacuum. Within hours, social media was flooded with speculation. Was there news about Nancy? Had investigators found something? Had there been a breakthrough, or worse, a devastating development, in the case? Twitter, now known as X, was awash with concern, with prayers, with questions that nobody could answer. One account that has been closely following the Nancy Guthrie case put it plainly. Every time Savannah leaves that set without explanation, the world stops and hopes, desperately, that there's news about her mom. But here's what we know now, based on a source that spoke to Page 6, one of the most reliable entertainment reporting outlets in the country. That source said clearly that Savannah's early exit on May 6th was for, quote, some sort of appointment, and that her departure had absolutely nothing to do with her mother's case. So it was not a dramatic breaking development. It was not a crisis moment. It was by all accounts something routine, a personal obligation, possibly medical, possibly related to her children, possibly something else entirely that a working mother of 2 simply needed to attend to. But here is the deeper truth that this moment reveals. Savannah Guthrie has become so synonymous with the search for her missing mother that even the most ordinary, mundane exit from a television set becomes a national moment of collective anxiety. The American public has become so emotionally invested in this family's nightmare that they are watching her every move, on air, off air, online, searching for any signal about what is happening behind the scenes. That is not celebrity gossip. That is the mark of a story that has genuinely pierced the national conscience. And the very next morning, Thursday, May 7th, Savannah was back. Seated at the anchor desk alongside Willie Geist, who was sitting in for Craig Melvin. She was smiling. She was laughing. She quoted Legally Blonde during a segment about the upcoming Elle prequel series. She gave no explanation for her absence the day before, and nobody on the show pushed her for one. She simply showed up, and did her job, as she has been doing, day after day, through something that most of us cannot even imagine surviving. For those who may be coming to this story fresh, let's take a moment to understand who Savannah Guthrie is, and why her personal ordeal has become so deeply public. Savannah Guthrie, 54 years old, has been a co-anchor on NBC's Today show since 2012. Before that, she served as White House correspondent for NBC News, covering 2 presidential administrations. She is a trained attorney. She is, by any measure, one of the most accomplished broadcast journalists in the United States. She is also a mother. She and her husband Michael Feldman have 2 children, a daughter named Vale and a son named Charlie. She lives in New York City, where she has built both her career and her family. And she has had a mother who was present in her life, who was vibrant and independent, who was mentally sharp even at 84 years old, and who lived alone in a home in the Catalina foothills, a suburb on the outskirts of Tucson, Arizona. That mother's name is Nancy Guthrie, and she has been missing since February 1st, 2026. Now here is something that matters enormously to understanding the full weight of what Savannah has been carrying. When Nancy disappeared, Savannah was on assignment for the Winter Olympics coverage. She was preparing for one of the biggest broadcasting events of the year. She set all of it aside. She stepped away from the Today show entirely. She went to be with her family in Tucson. She spent nearly 2 full months away from the desk. the desk that is, in many ways, the center of her professional identity. Hoda Kotb, Savannah's longtime co-anchor and close friend, stepped in to fill that seat while Savannah was gone, and a rotating cast of guest anchors helped carry the show through weeks and weeks of Savannah's absence. She returned to Today on April 6, 2026, 2 months after her mother disappeared, and she did it in the most emotionally open way imaginable. She sat down with Hoda Kotb for an interview that was raw and honest and deeply moving. She told Hoda, "I will not fall apart. I will not let whoever did this take my children's mother from them. I will not let them take my joy." And then she said something that has stayed with a lot of people. She said, "My joy will be my protest. My joy will be my answer." Think about what it takes to say something like that. To choose joy, consciously, deliberately, as an act of resistance against whoever is responsible for the disappearance of your mother. That is not denial. That is not performance. That is one of the most quietly courageous things a person can do in the middle of a crisis. And she has been living it, every single day, on live national television. Now let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand why this case has consumed so much of the country's attention, you need to understand exactly what happened on the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Nancy Ellen Long was born on January 27, 1942, in Fort Wright, Kentucky. She is 84 years old. She moved to the Tucson area more than 50 years ago with her family, and she has lived there ever since. Her husband, Charles Guthrie, passed away in 1988 at just 49 years old during a mining exploration trip in Mexico. Nancy raised her 3 children, Savannah, Annie, and Cameron, largely on her own after that. By all accounts from family members, she was mentally sharp, fiercely independent, and deeply connected to her faith and her community. She lived alone in her home in the Catalina foothills, and she was, by every description, a woman who was thriving in her 80s. The last confirmed sighting of Nancy Guthrie occurred on the evening of Saturday, January 31, 2026. Her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, who is married to Nancy's older daughter Annie, dropped her off at her home at approximately 9:50 in the evening. That was the last time anyone known to her family saw her. The following morning, Sunday, February 1st, Nancy did not appear for a scheduled church service. This was unusual enough that a member of her church reached out to the family to flag her absence. Relatives went to Nancy's home around 11 in the morning to check on her. They searched the house and the surrounding property. They found no sign of her. At noon, the family called 911. What investigators found when they responded to that home was deeply alarming. Nancy's phone was still inside. Her other essential personal belongings were still inside. The house showed signs of forced entry. Multiple security cameras on the property had been damaged, deliberately tampered with in a way that strongly suggested premeditation. And DNA evidence was recovered from her front porch. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, who leads the department with primary jurisdiction over the case, reviewed the evidence and concluded publicly that he believed Nancy Guthrie had been abducted, taken against her will. This was not a voluntary disappearance. This was not a confused elderly woman who wandered away. This was, in the assessment of law enforcement, a kidnapping. And then, 10 days after Nancy vanished, something even more chilling emerged. FBI Director Kash Patel, who had personally become involved in the case at the federal level, reached out to leadership at Google. He asked them a very specific question. Even though Nancy did not have an active paid subscription to Google's Nest camera recording service, meaning her footage was not being automatically saved, was there any residual data, any cached information, still sitting in back-end systems that could be recovered? Google went to work, and what they found changed everything. On February 10th, Kash Patel publicly released 4 black and white images on X, formerly known as Twitter. Those images showed a masked individual standing outside Nancy Guthrie's home. The person was wearing gloves. They had a black Ozark Trail Hiker Pack backpack, a 25-liter bag, the kind you might find at any outdoor retailer. And they appeared to be armed, with what looked like a firearm placed in an improvised holster. Critically, the footage showed this individual attempting to tamper with the doorbell camera, tapping it lightly, trying to knock it off, and when that didn't work, covering the lens with foliage from a nearby potted plant. This person knew what they were doing. They came prepared. They targeted a specific home. They tried to eliminate the evidence. This was not random. Investigators described the suspect as a man of average build, approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall, with a black mustache. Ransom notes also began surfacing in the days following Nancy's disappearance. A CBS affiliate in Tucson received a letter demanding cryptocurrency payment for Nancy's release. Multiple media outlets reported receiving similar communications. 2 deadlines named in those notes came and went without any confirmed exchange. The FBI and Sheriff's Department neither confirmed nor denied the validity of those notes as they worked to verify their authenticity. One individual, identified in court documents as Colella, was actually indicted on federal charges related to the case. Not for the kidnapping itself, but for sending text messages to members of the Guthrie family on February 4th asking about a Bitcoin transaction, apparently attempting to exploit the family's desperation. His trial is currently scheduled for June 23rd at the federal courthouse in Tucson. As of today, May 8, 2026, no suspects have been officially named or charged in connection with Nancy Guthrie's actual disappearance. No motive has been publicly identified. The investigation remains active and ongoing, and Nancy herself has still not been found. Now we come to one of the most troubling chapters of this entire investigation, a public dispute between the nation's top law enforcement official and the local sheriff's department in charge of this case. On Tuesday, May 5th, FBI Director Kash Patel appeared on Sean Hannity's podcast, and what he said was explosive. He told Hannity that for the first 4 days after Nancy Guthrie was reported missing, the most critical window in any missing person investigation, the FBI was essentially kept out of the case. The first 48 hours of anyone's disappearance are the most critical, Patel said on the podcast. For 4 days, we were kept out of the investigation. He went on to say that when the FBI was finally brought in, they immediately went to work and produced results. He personally called Google leadership to recover the doorbell camera footage, which became the most significant piece of visual evidence in the case. That's why you have that image, Patel said, because the FBI worked with Google to put that image out. Patel also raised concerns about the handling of physical evidence. Blood found on Nancy's porch was confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Nancy herself, a deeply sobering confirmation that violence had occurred at that location. But mixed, partial DNA samples found inside the home proved far more difficult to analyze. Those samples were sent by the Pima County Sheriff's Department to a private forensics laboratory in Florida, a lab that has a working relationship with the local department, rather than to the FBI's world-class forensic laboratory at Quantico, Virginia. Patel was blunt in his criticism. "We have Quantico, best lab in the world," he said. He added that he had a plane standing by, ready to transport the evidence through the night to Quantico, if only he'd been given the authorization to do so. It took 11 weeks, before that Florida lab transferred an original hair sample from the Guthrie case to the FBI laboratory for analysis. The FBI had reportedly requested that material more than 2 months earlier. These are not small procedural disagreements. These are potentially consequential delays in a case where every day that passes makes it harder to find a missing person alive. But Sheriff Chris Nanos and the Pima County Sheriff's Department pushed back hard. In a statement released on X, the department said that Nanos responded personally to the scene the night Nancy was reported missing, and that a member of the FBI task force was also notified and was present at the scene that same night. The statement said the FBI was promptly notified by both our department and the Guthrie family, and that coordination with the Bureau began without delay. On the question of the DNA samples, the Sheriff's Office said decisions about evidence processing were made on the scene based on operational needs, and that the two laboratories, the private Florida lab and the FBI facility at Quantico, have been working in close partnership throughout the investigation. As of this reporting, the two sides remain in disagreement about the timeline. What is not in dispute is this: the investigation has now stretched past 3 months. No suspect has been charged, and Nancy Guthrie remains missing. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has also confirmed in a recent public statement that the investigation is continuing, that they are working closely with federal partners, and that the current analytical focus is on DNA evidence and footage review. A San Francisco forensics laboratory, reportedly the same lab that helped crack the Rex Heuermann case, in which a man pleaded guilty to murdering 8 women on Long Island, has also been mentioned in connection with potential DNA analysis work in the Guthrie case, though the Sheriff's Department has not officially confirmed the lab's full involvement. Here is something that many viewers may not know, a behind-the-scenes detail that speaks to just how seriously NBC is taking Savannah Guthrie's situation. According to a report published by the Daily Mail in April 2026, NBC has reportedly created a secret code phrase, an internal shorthand, specifically designed to alert Savannah if there is a major development in her mother's case while she is live on air. An insider told the outlet that if producers communicate to Savannah that she is needed off set, that is the signal. It means there has been a significant update in the Nancy Guthrie investigation. At that point, the plan is to quietly remove Savannah from the set immediately, mid-segment if necessary, take her to a private office, and inform her of the news there. Another anchor would simultaneously handle the breaking story on air. We would pull her immediately, mid-segment if we had to, the insider told the Daily Mail. This protocol reveals something important. NBC is not treating Savannah's situation as a background personal matter that she simply manages between segments. They are actively, operationally prepared for the moment when news about Nancy breaks, good or bad, and they have built an entire system to make sure Savannah hears it in private from people she trusts before it becomes a broadcast story. That is an extraordinary level of institutional care. And it also explains, in part, why Savannah's unannounced exit on May 6th caused such immediate concern. When a viewer knows that such a protocol exists, and then sees an anchor suddenly vanish from the screen, the mind goes immediately to the worst possible scenario. In this case, we now know the exit was unrelated to her mother. It was personal, it was routine, and Savannah was back at her desk the very next morning. But the fact that so many people's hearts dropped in that moment says something profound about how invested the public has become in this family's nightmare. Throughout all of this, through 3 months of uncertainty, of fear, of not knowing whether her mother is alive or dead, Savannah Guthrie has conducted herself with a dignity and an openness that is genuinely remarkable. She has turned to social media repeatedly to ask for help. She and her siblings, Annie and Cameron, have made public appeals, posted images, and urged anyone with any information to come forward. On one occasion, fans gathered outside the Today studio at Rockefeller Center in New York, wearing yellow ribbons, a symbol of hope for Nancy's safe return, and holding signs of support. One sign read, "We love you, Savannah." Another read, "Decide and do," a tribute to advice that Nancy had given Savannah years earlier, after the death of Savannah's father, about how to move through grief with purpose. Savannah's family has been cleared by investigators of any involvement in Nancy's disappearance. The reward for information leading to Nancy's recovery currently stands at $1 million, offered by the family and supported by public fundraising efforts. And still, as of May 8, 2026, More than 3 months since Nancy Guthrie was last seen alive. No one has come forward with credible information that has led to her location. The case remains, in the words of the Pima County Sheriff's Department, active and ongoing. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a story that refuses to end. An 84-year-old woman pulled from her home by a masked, armed intruder in the middle of the night. A daughter living her private nightmare in public, on national television, every single morning. A federal investigation complicated by jurisdictional disputes and delayed evidence transfers. A $1 million reward that has, so far, not produced the answer this family is desperate for. And a moment, just 2 days ago, when Savannah Guthrie stepped away from the anchor desk without warning, and an entire nation held its breath. She came back the next morning. She smiled. She quoted Legally Blonde. She did her job. Because that is what she has chosen to do. That is the protest she told Hoda Kotb about. That is the joy she refuses to surrender. But Nancy Guthrie is still missing. And until she is found, until this family gets an answer, this story is not over. If you have any information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, please contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department tip line or reach out to the FBI's field office in Phoenix, Arizona. A $1 million reward is available for information that assists in her recovery. And if this video helped you understand this story more deeply, if it gave you something that the headlines didn't, please subscribe to this channel right now. Share this video with your friends and family. Because the more people who know about Nancy Guthrie, the better the chances that someone somewhere comes forward with the information that brings her home. Thank you for watching. Stay with us. We will keep following this story until we have an answer.